Committee on the 28th of November. I'm standing in for Martin Veal, who's sent his apologies of absence today. So I'm standing in as the Vice Chair of the committee. Is there any other apologies of absence? Thank you. Thank you very much. Just moving on to agenda item 2, declarations of interest. Sorry, just been brought to my attention. Kevin, would you like to?
Yes. Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to inform the committee that I will need to leave by 3:30 if it goes any further.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Hello, sorry, I'm looking at the screen over my shoulder here. Sorry, thank you. Councillor Salmon.
Thank you, Chair. I'm not too sure if Democratic Services have said, but because I didn't hear anything, Councillor Jeremy Davis sends his apologies, and Councillor Claire Jones, if she hasn't arrived, she will be arriving soon.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much, Councillor Salmon. Thank you for that. So we'll just move on then to the minutes of the minutes of the previous meeting on the agenda item 3. So this is the meeting that was held on the 24th of October. We have had some comments from the chair since the last meeting. So we had some comments by email correspondence from Martin Veal, who's the chair of this committee. But I understand these comments have been resolved. Am I correct in saying that? Can anybody confirm that? If I go through them, maybe some clarification there then. So I understand that in the last minutes, the chair had brought up that Kerry Dingham, they have been resolved. Lovely. Thank you. Thanks for that. I won't go through the detail then. That's lovely. Thank you. Clarify as well. In respect of the audit committee log, which is on page 11 in the papers, if I can refer. Bear with me, I'm just going to the page. So in the action log, item number 4, couldn't somebody please just confirm if there was a response on the actions taken, which were provided to the October meeting as indicated? This was a review of forward work programme against committee terms of reference to ensure that all items are covered. And we've been to audit. Are you able to respond? Thank you.
Yes, thank you. I can confirm that that's now been undertaken, and we've I think there was a verbal update last time that this had been completed, but we've since done another exercise just to confirm that all of the committee terms of reference are included in the forward work programme. So that's now complete. Yes.
Thank you. That's great. Item 10 on the committee log, audit committee action log. Can an update be provided on the target in place for the training workshop for members, please? Sorry, that's for Democratic Services. It was the risk workshops training for members. And the last item on this, just generally, closed items, can the log be updated to show these closed or completed items? Such as the ones that we've discussed, and I think item 1 and 9, maybe item 3. Are members in agreement for that?
Yep.
Lovely, thank you very much. Agenda item 4. This is the statement of accounts for 2021 to 2022. A report has been prepared regarding the certification delay. I understand an update is going to be provided by Steve Jones.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Yeah, so this is an update and it is in respect of the accounts for last year. And as you will be aware, is that the accounts should have been closed and signed off by the end of this month. But it's owing to an issue which is a national issue and is in respect of infrastructure assets that the accounts can't be signed off at this point in time. And it has been agreed that there just will be an extension and that authorities have got now until the end of January and for the accounts to be signed off. It's, as I said earlier, really, it is owing to a very technical issue, and it does, and it just does affect every, just about every single authority in Wales and just across the whole of the UK. So it's just to basically say that our accounts at this point in time will then be signed off, hopefully in the council on the 18th of January. And then we plan for the audited accounts then to come then to this committee on the 16th of January. So I'll stop there, Chair, and I'll ask if there are any, if there are any questions.
Thank you, Steve. Has anybody got any questions? Councillor Gibbs?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. My question to Steve is on page 16. It says the authorities to include a note on their website to say why they haven't prepared or published their accounts within existing deadlines. But I notice on our website it says because of COVID, but that's not technically correct, is it?
Yeah, what is included on the website is a standard message, really. So it's still part of the accounts not being able to be closed by the statutory date. But it is as a result of COVID still. But obviously now with this other issue that we have, this has now meant that the accounts will have to be extended again and then not closed until the end of January. But the message on the website, it does actually cover this issue as well.
Yeah, because it does state COVID, and I don't think we should be using COVID if that's not the reason. If it's a technicality, I think we need to explain this a technicality and not just use COVID as an excuse, as a lot of places seem to be doing at the moment. It's just my thoughts on that.
Thank you, Councillor Gibbs. Is there any problem with adding some more detail there to clarify, in addition to the standard explanation related to COVID, but adding a little bit more detail? Is it possible to have a response in respect to that request?
Yes, I think that is the case, that we can add that bit of extra depth. But the actual COVID issue, and that's why that is included as part of the statement on the website, is because originally the accounts were to be signed off by the end of July. But because of the extension that we've had over the last number of years, that was then extended to the end of November. And then because of this technical issue, then that is now extended to the 31st of January. But I understand what Councillor Gibbs has said, and we can include that extra little bit of depth in that note.
That's
Thank
lovely.
you. Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Chair. That's me then.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Gibbs. That'd be great. If there's a further update needed, maybe it'd be worth bringing it to the next meeting. Just to clarify. Is there any other comments in respect of agenda item 4? Otherwise, we'll move on to agenda item 5. This is the Ombudsman annual letter for the Council 2021-2022, Merthyr Tydfil County Borough Council. And I understand this report is going to be presented by Councillor Andrew Barry. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Excuse me. It's an annual report, Chair, of the letter from the new Public Service Ombudsman for Wales, Michelle Morris, in relation to maladministration and service failure, giving a pan-Wales position and, more importantly, those issues relating to this authority. The letter can be found in Appendix 1. Within the letter, Chair, there is a specific reference to feedback from the Governance and Audit Committee for feedback of the authority's ability to handle complaints effectively, which we can deal with within the next report to follow this. Appendices to the letter include the breakdown of the 27 referrals made within the last year. We've got Simon Jones with us today, the authority's solicitor. Should have any questions of the breakdown, and the recommendation is just to note the annual letter. Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Barry. Has anybody got any comments? I would like to ask a question. Oh, yeah. Sorry. Councillor Scriven, sorry.
Thank you, Chair. Just a query around Appendix B, which is on page 27. Complaints handling, just for my clarity, is this specific to complaints that officers have handled over complaints received? Is that what that's regarding?
Thank you, Councillor Scriven. Does anybody respond?
Here we are. Yeah, thank you for that question. I'd anticipated that would come out because when I saw the report, I could see that there were 27 referrals to the Ombudsman, and complaint handling was 7 of those, 26%. And for a small department of 1.5 staff, that was surprising. Anyway, I've made inquiries, and I think the answer is quite simple. I think when complaints come into the council in the first instance, it's obviously never about complaint handling. It'll be about bins, it'll be about waste, it'll be about, it can be anything. We sort all the complaints into categories at that stage, and we then go through the complaints system. Very often, people aren't happy with the outcome of that complaint, and 27 people weren't happy, and they went to the Ombudsman, and they will then say, for instance, I'm not happy with the way that complaint was handled. I don't think they're saying they're not happy with Gaynor and Sarah, who work within the department. They're saying they're not happy with the outcome. So I think that is why that is reflected at such a high level. I'm not sure if that answers your question, Councillor.
Yes, of course. That's what I was trying to get to, because obviously, as you said, I was reading through the report, and obviously there were identifications made about social services complaints, but then looking at the finer detail, over a quarter of complaints that went forward were specifically to complaints handling. So from my perspective, when we're reviewing as a council how we deal with complaints, that to me did draw some concern on why there was so much that had gone forward in terms of our complaints procedures. But of course, I understand, as you said, from your perspective, there will still be people that get to the end of the process that are still not happy with the outcome. And I guess if there's opportunity to look at that in closer detail and see why those numbers are so high in comparison to the data we did collect, that would be of interest.
Yes, of course. Another thing I'd point out as well in Appendix A, you look that we are quite high. The number of complaints that went to the Ombudsman from Merthyr residents was 27. That's 0.45 per 1,000 residents. And if you look at the comparison with other councils there, we are on the top end there. But what is pleasing then, if you then go further into it, you'll see that of those 27 complaints, only 2 of those were actually intervened by the Ombudsman. And that takes us from being probably one of the highest for complaints going there, with only 2 being intervened. We're the 6th lowest in Wales. So when you delve into it, it's not as bad as the figures initially show. Yeah, so 8% of our interventions that goes to the Ombudsman were intervened, and that, as I said, the Welsh average was 14%. So we are low there. So I think that's a good indication that our complaint system below Ombudsman level is working. And if it goes up to the Ombudsman, doesn't necessarily mean that we haven't considered it properly. It means that some people are just not happy with the outcome. So that was pleasing.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Simon. Thank you, Councillor Scriven, for that question. Has anybody else got any questions? I'd just like to ask just 2 questions. In Appendix B, if we have the categories of subjects of complaints, and one is various other, which always makes me wonder what that other might be. Would somebody be able to respond to explain what that other may relate to?
Couldn't define for sure, but the Ombudsman stats that are in front of us here, the categories that they expect us to put all the data under. So if it doesn't fall into anything of the above, then we would put it under various other. Very often that might be a staff complaint.
Thank you very much. My other question was really thinking about the trend of complaints, whether there was a comparison available for previous years, and just to see how the performance was against that trend in the current year.
That information is available, Chair. I haven't got it today. If you were to go onto the Ombudsman website and just type in annual reports, you can see that for every council in Wales, there's the annual letters stored there for the last 11 or 12 years. So if you want to delve in to Merthyr's over that period of time, that information is there, and the comparative data is there as well. It was this is the first year that the Ombudsman in the letter, I mean, you see it, there's a little action plan at the end, says what we got to do. And it says there that it's got to go before, present my annual letter to Cabinet and to the Governance and Audit Committee. That's the first time it's gone to this committee. Perhaps next year, as we build forward, because this is going to be an annual thing, we can then build in comparative data from other years. The information is there. It's just type in annual letter, and it's accessible that way.
Okay, lovely. Thank you very much. That might be useful to have for future use. That would be really helpful. Thank you. Is there any other comments? Questions? Okay, I think we were asked to note the contents of this particular letter. So in the absence of any other further comments, I think we're happy to note that, if that's okay. We'll move on to agenda item 6. The annual review and assessment of complaint handling and effectiveness at Merthyr Tydfil County Borough Council for the year 2021-22. And as I understand, Councillor Andrew Barry will take us through this. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. This relates pretty much to the previous report in that legislation requires the Governance and Audit Committee to review and assess the authority's ability to handle complaints effectively, not so much the critique of the detail in those complaints. The annual report on social services, ability to handle complaints, can be found in Appendix 1. Appendix 2 has the corporate complaints. Section 3 of this report highlights the importance that the authority puts on dealing effectively with complaints, detailing that there have been no changes in the way we handle these issues since the last report detailed to committee on the 14th of February this year. We have a dedicated complaints department comprising of 1 full-time complaints officer, Gainer, 1 full-time support complaints officer managed by the senior solicitor and monitoring officer, with council solicitor support in dealing with Public Service Ombudsman for Wales, Simon. The website has a dedicated section to making a complaint, with links to the procedures, comments and customer feedback for all associated forms and policies. The specific procedures for some services that are all explained there. All staff are trained in handling complaints, with the next in-house training session arranged for the 19th of January. The annual report outlines the type of complaints we receive, the reporting and recording, along with the analysis of complaint data between April 2021 and March 2022. Last year, the authority received 614 complaints, 33 adult social services, 82 children's social services, and 499 corporate complaints. Of these, as we outlined previously, ended up with 27 referrals to the Ombudsman. We have with us today Gainer, the Complaints Officer, Simon, the County Solicitor. The recommendations, Chair of the Governance and Audit Committee, note and review the authority's ability to handle complaints effectively with the associated reports and recommendations, and subsequently refer the report with any comments to the Cabinet for consideration. Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Barry. That was very lovely explanation, thorough explanation of the complaints handling and effectiveness process. Thank you. Has anybody got any questions or comments? Sorry, Councillor Scriven. Salmon, sorry. My apologies. Councillor Salmon?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the report. However, it is quite vague in regards to the exact nature of the complaints, and I understand that because it's for GDPR reasons, and this is why I won't go into more detail. But I'd just like to ask if the Cabinet members for different service areas are made aware of what complaints have been made so that these can be raised with officers, because I'm looking at Appendix 2, and it just gives some of the breakdown on complaints received over the last 3 years, and to be honest, there seems to be big jumps in cemeteries, environmental, highways, parking and recycling, and it would just be nice to know that the Cabinet members are being made aware of it, so that things can be actioned and changed if necessary.
Yep, thank you. Could you respond, please? Thanks.
Yeah, so all increases have been, I can understand as being justified. For example, if I say cemeteries, we recently had, I think a lot of the councillors will be aware, where we had to withdraw items from the gravestones in order to provide it's safer for those that were visiting. That did generate a high amount of complaints from very sensitive area, very sensitive subject, and it did sort of draw in a number of complaints there. So that's why cemeteries, I think, are aware of that. All those were liaised with Paul Jones, and we met a lot of the members of public up the cemetery. The complaints department did, along with the managers, and fortunately for us, they weren't escalated then to stage 2.
Thank you, Gainer. So back to my question.
Yeah.
Are Cabinet members made aware of when there's of what complaints are made, and especially when there's big jumps?
Myself wouldn't make that aware. That would be, I would do that within my report, but the managers would meet with their line managers accordingly. I'm not sure whether they raise that point with them.
Thank you, Gaynor. I'll bring it up with a cabinet member then. One last question, Appendix 2 as well, page 12. In regards to, bear with me now, just find it. Total complaints. And it's got no responsive outcome from manager / department. Now, over the last 4 years, the numbers are quite high, and I have to say this doesn't really look good from a public perspective, if I'm reading it correctly. Is there a reason why when a complaint has been made that you're not getting a response from the manager or the department?
Yeah, I mean, this is a constant frustration for the complaints department, because before we get to that point where we document it down as no response to the managers, we probably have chased it up about 3 to 4 times, if not more. We can't spend any further time on it, chasing it up, because we have complaints continually come in. And I'm hoping by raising it as you can see from the last couple of years, it continues to remain quite high, that this will be raised then from senior management down to make sure that the managers are providing the responses that we need in order that we can close it down on our system. There is training provided in January to the managers of the corporate departments, and this will be highlighted then.
Lovely, thank you, Gaynor. Maybe an action could come from this committee to write a letter to different departments and say that, listen, you need to respond to complaints, because 1, it's good for the public, and 2, Gaynor, would make your life a lot easier as well.
Yes, that would be great.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Chair.
Sounds like a reasonable request, I think. Yeah, I agree. Councillor Barry, sorry.
It's in relation to Councillor Salmon's earlier question in terms of that link between complaints and cabinet. I think it's safe to say there's no direct link coming to cabinet members with those complaints. And I'm looking at the figures there for last year, 499 to the corporate centre. That's an awful lot, and I wouldn't want to be inundated with complaints, individual complaints. But I think there's a call and a mechanism that we have where perhaps the complaints can be brought to corporate leadership team when they meet with cabinet, or perhaps even a quarterly basis. So we strengthen that link. It's a great point, because we only learn when we get complaints. You know, you don't learn when things are going well. You learn when you get complaints and people have got issues. And I think for cabinet members to action or be involved in the actions to improve the service is a great opportunity. So possibly an action point there, recommendation from committee could be possibly the complaints come to cabinet corporate leadership team meetings on whatever sort of time scale we thought was useful, be guided by that, by you on that, Gaynor, to be honest. But just so we build that strength into resolution, you know.
They supply stats to the Ombudsman on a quarterly basis, and I'm happy to supply them on. So that would be more or less mirrored really what's in the report.
Great.
Thank you, Councillor Barry. Thank you, Gaynor. Councillor Gibbs?
I think Councillor Scriven was before me, Chair. I don't want to steal his thunder.
My apologies, Councillor Scriven. Sorry, after Councillor Scriven.
Thank you, Councillor Gibbs. Yeah, just 2 questions, and this is, it sort of goes off the back of what Councillor Salmon was just saying about how we ensure those practices are working, but this is on the resident side of things and rather than our link to cabinet. Obviously, I was reading through the report and there's a bit in there about the make a complaint section on the website. Great. I spend a lot of time on the website as an elected member, by business to be involved and see what's going on and use that website regularly. And I'll be honest, I had missed where the make a complaint section was. And so I went on there and I had a look and I thought, right, where is it? And I get that there's a resident pop-down section, what's popular for residents, and it's not a very long list. But you go down through all the different issues, and we've got things like the RAS strategy coming up before make a complaint. Now, from my perspective, that's not prominent enough, and I'm not trying to open the floodgate and say that we need more complaints coming in. But I'll give an example, and forgive me, I can't remember the website that did it. It may have been Dowis Cymru at the time, but they were trying to make more awareness around the Social Services Wellbeing Act and make sure that people had the right access for social services complaints. And what they did is they had a prominent, it was an exclamation mark. It's a really bad example for people to get in touch with social services on the website. Contextually though, do we need something like that on our own website that makes it really clear to residents, this is where you make a complaint? It's because as elected members, as I'm saying, we go on this website and we do look around. It's our jobs to be up and inundated, but as a resident, it's a convenience. I want to be able to go onto the website and find what I'm looking for straight away. To me, it's not in the right place. It's not immediate. That's where I make a complaint. Even as an elected member, I've overlooked it. I don't think that it's in the correct place. So I just want that to be noted, and for us to have some consideration to that on the website. As I said, not to open the floodgate and get a mass of reports and complaints coming in, but I do think it needs to be considered where that is in order for us to receive complaints. As Councillor Barry said, we only learn from complaints if we receive them. So it goes both ways, whether or not that's a link to Cabinet or a link from residents, it needs to be accessible. My second point being then, it's great that it's on the website, as long as it's prominent and people can access in the right way. But for those that are not online, how are they accessing complaints procedures in a paper format or in any other various way? How are they informed of that?
Thank you, Councillor Scriven. Would they like to respond to councillors' requests?
Yeah. Following training that we did online with the social services staff, we made sure that all the public areas, as in contact centre, the health park, that they provide all copies. We've provided printed copies of the complaint procedure and how to make a complaint as well. We also take complaints by telephone, and the contact centre have received training on this, so they know what the process would be. We've got a designated email address as well, which is on the complaints procedure. So there's a number of options really that they can make a complaint.
Councillor Scriven, noting your request, I think it's reasonable to include that as noted in the committee papers, that they're and noting your request, your response. Thank you, Gaynor.
That's great. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Gibbs.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I've got a couple of questions for Gaynor. On page 37 of the actual report, it says complaint numbers do not reflect the number of concerns that are deemed to be case management issues, as opposed to a complaint. Can you give us, can you explain a little bit further into that, may please, Gaynor?
Yes, this is something that we wouldn't possibly record as a formal complaint. It might be that, for example, a social worker hasn't returned a call. It might be that on a corporate side, somebody's bin haven't been collected once. So mainly the case managements we put down to the social services part. If somebody's telephoned and said, I'm waiting for a call and I haven't had that call, then we'll put it down as case management. However, if they come back to us, they said, well, I still haven't had that call, then we will take it down the complaint process then.
Yeah, because I was interested to see what the case management issues were, because technically any expression of dissatisfaction, whether justified or not, is a complaint, isn't it? Really?
Yes, yeah, and we will document it down. But if call's gone back and it's been resolved within 24 hours, I won't document it down as a complaint then.
Question is, should we? Something to ponder.
Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Gibbs.
Uh,
to follow up on Councillor Gibbs' request. Sorry, Councillor Gibbs, were you still talking?
No, sorry, I've still got a couple more questions.
Sorry, carry on.
Right, in the same paragraph, it says, in addition, the complaints department continue to focus on supporting service areas by answering concerns and complaints in the first point of contact with parents, guardians, and this has successfully reduced the number of complaints. Are these logged? I take it these are not logged on the council system as a complaint?
No, no. I mean, a lot of the time the complainant will drive on whether they want to identify it as a complaint or not. So if they've contacted me and said that a social worker haven't called them back, and then it gets resolved within 24 hours, we usually contact the complainant then and say, is there any further issues? Do you want to take it any further? And they say no, we close it down. So the complainant drives really the direction on that.
Right, okay. Still got a couple more. See these complaints. Yeah, that follows on from that one. It's the same one. All right. On the table on page 49, and this is going to be for quite a few of the tables. Investigation discontinued. Can you provide an example of when an investigation would be discontinued?
That would be usually, again, if the complainant is driving it and doesn't want to take it any further, and they have originally identified it as wanting to make a complaint, it would get discontinued. It would get discontinued if it's not for the department, or it's not seen as a sort of formal complaint.
Right. But again, it's going against the definition of a complaint, isn't it? Okay.
But it's when when we can't the difficulty we have is the ombudsman document categorize them into not upheld or upheld, and it used to be that we used to have part upheld as well, where an element of it might have been upheld. But if it does get discontinued for any reason, sometimes another reason would be we've asked for a consent form in order to progress it if somebody's making a complaint on behalf of somebody else. And if they haven't sent that consent form back, we do chase that up on another 2 occasions. And if they don't come back to us, then we will discontinue the complaint.
Yeah, sure. Okay. And the last one is on page 54. Can you give us an example of investigation not merited?
For stage 1. It's when it doesn't fall into any sort of category. It might be we have a lot of personnel complaints against staff members that doesn't actually fall within the remit of a complaint, and in that way, then we would say that an investigation is not merited.
Can you give us an example of that?
Oh, gosh, there would be. If they're complaining about a staff member that no longer works for the local authority.
Okay. It seems quite a lot, doesn't it? 9.
Well, that's one example I can give you. I mean, I can get further information again, but that would be when it doesn't. The difficulty that we have with the ombudsman categories, they do fall into very strong individual, and each of those that we've put not merited, we've come to that resolution. It's not upheld or not upheld. It's not withdrawn, and it doesn't sort of warrant any further investigation. Then it wouldn't be merited.
Okay. Yeah. We seem to be missing a trick on a lot of these. In my honest opinion, to be honest with you, I think we should be logging a lot more than we are, and potentially
everything that comes into the complaints department we log. So every number that we have down there is because they've contacted the complaints department. There might be a number of other complaints that come in via councillors who go straight to the department, and if we have no record of it, then we can't log it.
Okay, but you've already said you don't log complaints where they've complained about somebody not ringing them back, which is communication issue,
If
isn't
it's
it?
resolved within 24 hours.
It is still a complaint.
If the complainant have said they just want somebody to ring them back and I mean, the complainant drives this. If they say they want to log it as a complaint, we document it down as a complaint. But if they ring in us to say that somebody hasn't rung them back and we get that resolved within 24 hours, we wouldn't log that down.
Looks like we need another category for complaints managed and resolved within 24 hours. Would make sense from where you're coming from on there then. So is that something we would need to take up with the ombudsman, or is that procedures we would be looking to write ourselves?
We're constantly in contact with the ombudsman, even with the categories that we currently have, because they're too broad, we feel, and this is something that we discuss with the other complaints officers as well. As I said, we used to have like a part upheld, which they withdrew from us. These are the categories that they want us to look at. But yeah, this is something that we can talk about going forward. I put it on my next agenda for my All Wales complaints meeting.
Lovely, because I think it's imperative, because it's imperative that we log everything, even if we do resolve it. It looks good from our point of view. Then that look, we've had so many complaints in, and X amount have been resolved within 24 hours. So thank you for taking that up. Again, much appreciated. Thank you. That's me.
Thank you for those questions, Councillor Gibbs. Councillor Scriven?
Thank you, Chair. Just a question in regards to one of the queries and comments that were brought up just now around an example that was given to yourself, Gaynor, then. So say a complaint is not noted because a staff member has left that position. Would that complaint still be not acted upon? Say staff member has moved department, they no longer occupy the role, but they've moved to a different department within the council, but there's still a complaint against it. Would that be something that would not be noted or not needed to be investigated?
Thank you, Councillor Scriven.
Yeah, it depends how relevant it is to the department that they're working in. Most of the ones that we put down as discontinued or not merited would be that some of the concerns are historic and they're outside the timescales, and that staff member has left, so we wouldn't take that any further then. If the focus is on just the staff member, a lot of the complaints that we do have in are focused on individuals, not on the process within the department.
Okay, so I'm assuming then in those circumstances where it can be of a personal nature then, and a staff member would have moved roles or departments, would that case then be looked into if the concern was valid, we're saying?
Again, depending on the nature of the complaint, if the complaint was completely focused on the individual staff member and that staff member has now left, then if there was no other concerns, then that would get closed.
Okay, that's great, thank you.
Okay, no, thank you, Councillor Scriven. I just one more comment really. Obviously there's been a lot of questions about the categories and you've responded obviously explaining that the categories laid out by the Ombudsman. I mean, is there any benefit, I suppose, in providing members in the future with further details on these, because the questions are around them? You know, if there are statistics kept on them, you know, could they be provided as appendices to a separate meeting, maybe, you know, with a little bit more detail?
I can certainly break down on the categories that are not that don't fall in within not upheld or upheld. So I can certainly sort of expand on them for more examples going forward. So, you know, to give an indication of what the examples are of each category. I that's fine. I can do that moving forward.
I think that's yeah, I think that sounds sensible. Thank you very much for that response. Thank you. Is there any more questions on this agenda item?
It is not working, but I've pressed some time ago.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. Yes.
That's okay, thank you. Firstly, I'd just like to, I know we've gone back to Steve, but I'd like to thank you all for writing the report. It's really appreciated. I have to say that firstly. But going on what Kevin Gibbs has said, Councillor Kevin Gibbs has said, Gaynor, when individuals contact you, is there any at all? Do you document anything? So you know, like obviously they may have been dealt with in the first 24 hours, but is there a log of any calls? So the initial call as we make. So if I've contacted you and you've said to me within 24 hours that I've said I'm happy with it, but say 2 days later I'm not, I would like to think that my call has been recorded anyway.
Anything that comes through the complaints department is documented down on we've got like an Excel spreadsheet. So we've got a record. We've also got individual folders for every social services contact that we've had. So if somebody comes back, some of these might also fall under investigation not merited. Some, you know, that might be some of the, it wouldn't necessarily be all of the resolved within 24 hours, but some of these might have fallen in. Again, the complainant drives this. So if I say, well, you know, I can document this down and acknowledge it, because we acknowledge every single complaint that comes through us. We got no control over anything that goes through councillors or MPs, but everything that comes either, through our email or through an online complaint form or the teleform is documented down and a folder is created. So should they come back, then, you know, then sometimes we would say, then this has to be addressed now as a formal complaint because they have expressed before that they're not happy with perhaps an individual and a social worker. I mean, a lot of these fall into the social services, children's services. That's the majority, as you can see from the stats. Yeah. But we do document down. We have got a spreadsheet with every single contact that comes through us.
Yeah, I think that's the point that I was trying to get again. It is because I work in children's services. So obviously the complaints that come through, it's easy enough for somebody to turn around and say, I'm happy with it. But I would like to know that you were covered as well, that when somebody who is unhappy, I don't want them pointing the finger at yourself. There is that documentation already in place. So thank you for answering that question. It's appreciated.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Councillor Jones and Gaynor. Councillor Gibbs.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just got a follow-up question on what Councillor Scriven was asking you again. I know you said if it's a complaint about a staff member and if they left, as in, I take it that's left the authority, it is not followed up on. But if they've moved to a different department, is that then followed up on? Because if the complaint is against the staff member and they move to a different department, then it still needs looking at.
I have no knowledge of the staff within social services that have left or not left. So every complaint that I have goes to the managers in social services. It is them that they're aware of, but it's them that then inform me of whether that staff member has left or not. So the complaint would certainly have reached the managers. But I can't recall where a staff member has gone to another department and there's an outstanding complaint against them. If they're still within the local authority, the complaint would still go ahead.
Right, that's the point. That's what I needed clarify on. So if they're still within the local authority, then the complaint still goes ahead. Brilliant.
Yes. Yeah.
Thank you, Gaynor.
Thank you, Councillor Gibbs. Thank you, Gaynor. Lots of useful discussion on this agenda item. And thank you for the questions and the responses. Jones.
Again, addressed to you. I'm so sorry. I'm assuming in all this you're a one-woman show.
That's right. I have, I am the only complaints officer to the local authority. So we do, but I do have now full-time support that provides admin support, and obviously when I'm off to make sure there's consistency with the complaints being addressed. My colleague is more than capable of acknowledging complaints and making sure that they forwarded within the timescales that we have to the relevant manager. But in answer to your question, yes.
Yeah, because my next question was, do you think, you know, with you being just one person, for you to get support, but it's good to you that you have the support
Yeah,
in place.
yeah,
Well
have a
done.
good-
And again, thank you for being the one person that's
Yeah.
doing this. I
But
wouldn't like
also in my absence as well, you know, if it's a significant absence, Simon's aware of that. So that if there's anything complex, Sarah then will liaise with Simon. If there's anything but there's continuity there. That's the important part. Yeah.
It's much appreciated. Thank you,
Thank
Gaynor.
you. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. Thank you, Gaynor. That's reassuring, isn't it? Should there be any unexpected absences or anything like that, that there is something in place as well for continuity. So that's good to clarify that. Thank you. Is there any more questions on this point? Okay. Well, I think it was for committee members to note the contents then and refer this report and comments to the Cabinet for consideration. If we move on then to agenda item 7, the external audit recommendations. If I can pass it to, is it Matthew Rivers for comments, please?
Good afternoon, all. Oh, excuse me. Report regarding the audit recommendations. As you can see there, it became from 2015-16. It's an audit action plan that we have in place, created by our in-house team for ICT. The elements being is that from all external recommendations that we have from Audit Wales, Estin, CIW, etc., get logged within the audit action plan system. And within on a monthly basis, the author of the report there will go to CMT and ask for updates regarding these. They're split by priority 1, 2, and 3, as you can see, on Appendix 1, with the priorities and the overall completion rates listed in the tables below for each of the directorates. So he's on leave today, so I'll do my best to answer any questions for this report. Thanks, Chair.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. Councillor Barry, did you have anything you'd like to? Agenda item, external audit recommendations. Okay, that's lovely. As members, we note and debate the information in the report for the future plans of the committee. Moving on then to agenda item 8, the Governance and Audit Committee Forward Work Programme. I understand in Mark's absence, Mark Thomas, I'd like to hand over to you, Lisa. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Agenda item 8 is the Governance and Audit Committee Forward Work Programme. This is a report which we bring to each committee meeting and ask members to approve. The purpose of the report is to help ensure that due consideration is given to all aspects of the core functions which the Governance and Audit Committee has responsibility. At Appendix A of the report, we detail all of the scheduled meetings for 2022-23. And we ask that due consideration is given to each of these items. The purpose of the schedule is also to make sure that everything that the committee are responsible for, there might be times when throughout the year items need to be postponed or scheduled for a later meeting. So it's just to make sure that we've got the correct coverage, that all responsibilities and considerations are given. So looking at the schedule of items for next Governance and Audit Committee on the 16th of January, our items which we propose to bring to you next time. So the first is the rolling programme corporate risk update from CMT members. We have the final statement of accounts, including the final AGS, the final self-assessment report, Audit Wales audit of accounts, progress against the internal audit plan, counter fraud update, committee forward work programme again, and the internal audit information reports. But it is something that, you know, possibly some of the reports could be subject to change depending on different elements. But, you know, the purpose of the schedule is just to make sure that nothing slips off the radar. And it's for transparency to see if it doesn't get presented one time, it's picked up at a future meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. Has anybody got any questions on board work programme? Lisa? Okay. So as members, we're asked to approve the work programme. If everybody's in agreement, we'll agree that then to approve the work programme. Moving on to agenda item 9. Again, over to you, Lisa, for the internal audit information reports.
Thank you, Chair. Again, this is another report which we present at each governance and audit committee. And the last time we came together to meet, we give an update on progress against the internal audit plan. And within that update, we made reference to a report relating to waste services income collection and our audit opinion of no assurance on internal controls and risk and governance arrangements. And this report is brought to you today at the request from last meeting, that members receive a full copy of the internal audit report for information. So today we've prepared this report and shared it between everybody as per the instruction from the last time we came together.
Thank you, Lisa. Has anybody got any questions for Lisa on this particular agenda item? I'd just like to ask one more question. We may have covered this in the last meeting, but just for clarification. Given that the report on waste management has no assurance, which again is quite exceptional. You know, I've seen a lot of reports with limited, but none with no assurance. And given that rating and the risks identified, will there be an update on this sooner than the normal schedule of follow-ups of audits?
Thank you, Chair. In accordance dates, in respect of this one particular report, we have had confirmation from management that all recommendations have been implemented. But we also have a procedure whereby any audits that we undertake with either a limited assurance audit opinion or a no assurance audit opinion, they are subject to a follow-up audit review. So not only are we asking management to confirm that they've put things right, we also go out and do some evidence-based testing as well. Now, I know that this is a piece of work that Helen undertook, and she's recently contacted the service area and had confirmation that these recommendations have all been implemented only last week. So what we would tend to do is, rather than going out straight away to do a follow-up audit, we need to give the service area sufficient time to put those recommendations in place and go back and have some meaningful information to analyse and base our opinion on. So we would put this audit in the plan probably for next year, but schedule it for April time, so it's sooner rather than later.
Thank you, Lisa. That's reassuring to know, and we'll look forward to receiving an update then back in April. Have members got any other comments on internal audit reports? We're being asked to determine any reports we'd like to consider in more detail at a future meeting, or any updates from officers on progress made. Any further comments? Okay, lovely. So moving on then swiftly to agenda item 10. Just a general reflection and evaluation of the meeting. I think we've had quite a useful meeting. It's been really useful to talk about the complaints process in particular, and I thank members for their comments and their questions on that, and officers' responses. And I'd like to move on to agenda item 11 then, which is any other business. There is one item that I'd like to discuss in committee, which is the corporate risk register. I was asked, I know members were asked, I wasn't able to attend a corporate risk workshop which took place since the last meeting, where members of this committee were invited. With the purpose to review changes to the corporate risk register following the last committee of the Governance and Audit Committee. And I understand that the risk register will be provided to the Cabinet, and the key points were provided by Officer Matthew Rivers. I've got an extract here which I'll share with the committee. So that the updated register with scoring for Q2, you will notice that the finance risks have increased due to financial uncertainty and the increase on energy costs. I think that's reasonable under these circumstances, with the cost of living and energy going up. The school attainment has reduced, risk scores reduced from 25 to 16. This was attributed to the positive ESTIN report, and the performance risk is reduced. The reasoning behind this was indicated in a self-assessment report, which I understand was due to be presented to the last Governance and Audit Committee, but will be presented at the next meeting. I'll invite officers to clarify that if you could.
Yeah, we initially had the final self-assessment report due to come into today's Governance and Audit Committee. Unfortunately, it was pulled at the moment, so we proposed it's going to come to the next Governance and Audit Committee. I'm not sure if Matthew Rivers can give an update on that.
Thanks, Ellen. I think the self-assessment report has been approved at, I think it was sent and documented in the 24th, with the two risks then forming part of that, which was the education. I think was a verbal update for that, and the performance risk was also there as well. I think the self-assessment though has been approved.
Yeah, the draft self-assessment report came to the Governance and Audit Committee the last meeting, and it was agreed that the final version was going to come to this Governance and Audit Committee. That's what it was scheduled for on the forward.
Right. Okay. Yeah, I can certainly bring the
just-
final version to the next meeting. Yes.
Yeah, I've just proposed that it'll come to the January meeting now.
Yes, that's fine. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you, Helen. Thank you, Matthew, for clarification on that point. Any other comments? I just wanted to ask as well, just for an update on the appointment of lay members, if members or members of the Democratic Services or officers could update. Is there any update on that?
I believe, Chair, that Mark Thomas, the head of the Regional Audit Service, has been engaging with some officers from Merthyr Council in respect of perhaps doing a re-advert of the job, because the timescale from when it was last advertised was not that long ago, perhaps using the same job advert. So I think there are some discussions going on currently, some sharing of some emails.
Thank you for that update. Thank you, Lisa. I think that's all additional business. I think that I have. Has any members got any other additional business they want to bring to the committee? No. I think that concludes our meeting then. If there's no other business, and I'd like to thank officers and members for their attendance at the meeting. Wishing everybody a very Merry Christmas and Happy New Year for the next meeting in January.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.